sneaky. Esau and Jacob didn't like each other. Before they were born, they fought. When they were being born, they fought. Jacob came out grabbing Esau's heel. And their parents didn't treat them equally. And they lived their lives in a state of conflict. Jacob schemed to get the better of Esau. One day he did. Esau traded his birthright for a meal. I feel a connection with Esau. He worked hard. I think he was honest and likely very kind. And I have a completely opposite feeling about Jacob. He schemed. He was dishonest. He was sneaky. I don't like the conflict. I don't like the sneakiness. I don't like the beginning of the story of Jacob and Esau. And though I feel a connection with Esau, I know that I have and likely will again act kind of like Jacob. And I'm glad that today's Bible reading is not the end of the story. There is so much more to the story. It didn't end with a scheming, dishonest, and sneaky Jacob. Steve Case, who's the brilliant author friend of mine, he wrote about Jacob in his book. It's called God Up Close. It comes from the Bible, but here's what Steve says about this and other stories in the book. He says, dramatized? Sure. Real? Absolutely. Of all the words you can use to describe God, distant isn't one of them. God is here, now, above, below, beside, beneath, behind, before, within, embracing, inspiring, encompassing, pouring, enveloping. So, let's hear more about Jacob's story. Jacob's up-close encounter with God. It's kind of dramatized by Steve. Jacob squatted quietly by the fire. Yesterday, the camp was alive, and one of his wives was constantly shooing one of his many children away from the fire. Well, actually from him. All of his wives knew that to keep the children away when he got like this. He loved his children with all his heart, loved them as much as he loved anything. But when they were rambunctious and full of vinegar, he would snap at them and they would cry. Then he would hold them and whisper gently, "It's okay, Daddy, sorry." Till one of their mothers came and shooed them away. This is what the camp was like when he was thinking about things, when he was deep into himself. See, he had sent the entire camp, his wives, his children, the servants, the animals, away. They had taken the tents and left him alone by the fire with his bedroll. With a stick, he poked at the wood and the flames. It was not worry that kept him awake, and it was not the fear that his brother could very well kill him tomorrow. It was the thought of facing his brother in the first place, the brother whom he had cheated out of the family inheritance, the brother whom he had left behind to care for the family business while he took the money and ran, Esau. He thought of his brother almost every day. He thought of the shouting his brother had done at the top of the mountain when he realized that not only was the money gone, but so was Jacob. Jacob had done what he had done. He had run away and started a life. Then the voice of God came to him and told him that he had to go home. He had to heal the rift with his brother. He had to atone, amend, and apologize. Just leaving with all his wives and children was an event, especially after what Rachel had done. Now they had gone ahead with gifts for Esau. Word had already come back that Esau had gathered an army of 400 men and would be standing at the end of the field where they had played as children. Tomorrow Jacob would walk into that field alone. He would kneel before his older brother and he would beg for forgiveness. Jacob was so deep in thought that he didn't hear the stranger arrive. The stranger was so silent that Jacob didn't know he was even there until he saw the man sitting on his haunches with his arms resting on his knees, as Jacob was, staring into the flames. The man looked up just as Jacob did. Their eyes met, and the man seemed to smile, but Jacob wasn't sure. The stranger tilted his head the way a child does when he's trying to ponder a flower or a strange new animal. The man across the fire had no beard. He had no lines in his face. Jacob would have guessed him to be no more than a teenager, but for the sheer size of him, he was bigger than he remembered Esau being. Jacob slowly moved his hand from his knee to the handle of his scabbard tied to his belt. See, Jacob had long ago stopped being surprised by the things that happened in his life. Perhaps it wasn't that he was not surprised, it was just that these things happened to him, and he simply understood that these things happened. He was no longer easily upset. "Who are you?" Jacob asked, and there was no answer. The man's eyes glistened in the firelight. Jacob stood and started to withdraw the scabbard from its sheath, but before he could, the man across the fire circle was on his feet and leaping over the flames at Jacob. He put two marble white hands on Jacob's shoulders and forced him to the ground. Jacob went down on his back hard. The knife tumbled away from him and out of range of the fire's glow. Jacob stood and gained his balance, and the stranger was gone. "Who are you?" Jacob shouted in the dark. But the question was moot. Jacob already knew he was in the presence of one of God's messengers, and this one liked to wrestle. Jacob knew that as long as he stood in the light of the fire, he was at a disadvantage. He was the only one who could be seen. It was time to make things a little more equal. So Jacob scooped up 2 handfuls of sand and tossed it on the flames. The dark was almost instantaneous. "That's how God answers my prayers," Jacob said in the dark. This time he heard the steps. He heard the flap of wings that lifted the stranger into the air when the sound of his footsteps stopped. Wings. He had wings. Jacob was not caught by surprise. He felt the front of the angel's new robe and pulled them both to the ground. They wrestled this way until the sun began to break over the horizon. They both turned and looked at the growing light. In the dim, Jacob was able to grab the angel and force him to the ground. He put a knee into the being's chest and pinned him there. The being spoke for the first time. "It's dawn. I must go." Jacob looked at him. He had beaten an angel, but the angel had no blood on him. His new clothes were still new, and Jacob could taste his own blood in the dirt in his own mouth. But he had beaten one of God's own angels. "My God has sent you to me with a blessing. You will give it to me now," said Jacob. The angel said, "What's your name?" "My name is Jacob." The angel reached out, and with no more than effort than a man picks up a blade of grass, he touched Jacob's hip with his finger and pushed the bone out of its socket. Jacob howled in pain and fell forward. The stranger pushed Jacob off him and let him roll onto his back. Screaming at the searing pain that now covered his entire side, Jacob clutched at his hip and tried to pound the bone back into place. The sun was beyond breaking over the horizon, and Jacob looked up and saw the face of the angel clearly for the first time. "Who are you?" he said. The angel bent low and said, "Why would you want to know my name?" He put his hand in Jacob's face and brushed the sweaty, filthy hair from his eyes. Jacob met the angel's eyes, and in that moment there was no pain. The angel said, "You have wrestled enough. It's time to go home." This is God's blessing. Your name is no longer Jacob. From this moment, you are Israel. With that, the angel was gone and the searing pain returned. Jacob, now Israel, which means wrestles with God, screamed again as if the injury was happening all over again. He pounded on the bone that was visible through his own robe, and on the third try, he felt it slide back into socket. But the intense pain subsided, and it became sort of a dull ache that embedded itself deep within his hip. It was a pain that he would feel the rest of his life. Last night, he wrestled with an angel of God. And today, he would meet his brother again, who would probably kill him and take his wife and children and all his treasure. Nothing surprised him anymore. That's more of the story of Jacob and Esau. It brings up a question today. Have you ever gone without speaking to somebody? How long? How long has it been? I think we can all hold grudges. But how does it feel when someone holds a grudge against us? What if it's deserved? The people who put together the Bible, the ancient Jews believed that different parts of the body controlled different emotions. Love, for example, was carried and controlled by the abdomen. Have you ever felt that squishy feeling in your stomach when you fall for someone? Or have you ever felt sick to your stomach when you break up? It was also believed that the pelvic area was the center of pride. And yes, you can make that analogy that you're thinking of right now. It's legit. After wrestling with the angel dislocated Jacob's hip bone, his pride, his hubris, not celebration like Pride Month, but hubris. Jacob could not have gone to meet his brother as the man he was. He had to have that hubris dislocated in order to go any further. We have broken relationships in our lives, friends we used to have. Old fights that get buried deep in our souls and are never resolved. Sometimes we have to fix things. We have to make amends. So Jacob had his hubris dislocated. It had to happen so he could become a better man. And God wants us to be better people, to do better, to make amends, to learn and to change. And we have to make an effort. See, wrestling is really the opposite of panic. If you're wrestling with an issue, that means that you recognize that the outcome is important. Never make an important decision in a panic. Instead, don't be afraid to wrestle with decisions. So what's a challenge for us? Take some time. Take some time to learn. Learn from sources that you're more likely to ignore. Here's a really good one. Learn from sources written from a different life experience than yours. Listen from the voices from people who have been marginalized, oppressed, abused, and forgotten. Take time to learn. All of us act like Jacob did. All of us act like Esau did. And God is a God who loves restored relationships. It's a God thing. It's what God does. And God is grace. God is forgiveness. God is unconditional love. So let's find ways to work together for the common good instead of stubbornly clenching tight to the way that keeps all things divided. Amen. Well, we're going to sing now. There's been a lot of music today. This song is it's a spiritual. It's one that's been in our hymn book since we got the hymn books. It's number 498. And it has sort of a sway groove to it as you sing. You're going to lead me and guide me. If you want to do that while you sing, you can move to the left and move to the right a little bit. You're not required to, but with all the VBS energy in here where the kids were doing movements and everything, we can move to this song too. So let us rise in body or in spirit and sing number 498, Lead Me